Welcome back to Frederick Advice Givers, episode 165. I am Eric Verdi, and to my left here is Pastor Barbara Kershner Daniel. We are at ERUCC here in downtown Frederick. You have a beautiful building here.
Thank you.
Basically two components. We want to talk about how you're making inroads in the Frederick community with your new structure here. I know you we're a beautiful location right behind the tasting room, a few stores up, right off of Market Street, right on Church Street. Pastor Daniel, I appreciate you coming on Advice Givers today. So for our audience that doesn't know you, give us your backstory. This is more of you personally, not the church, but you personally, who you are, where do you grow up?
Sure. I grew up in Philadelphia and served churches in Pennsylvania, outside of Reading, Pennsylvania for 23 years before moving down here to Frederick, and I'm so glad to be back in a city. Loved where I served in Pennsylvania, but I love being able to walk around and eat at the restaurants and walk to and from work. We live up near Hood College, so enjoyed that. I'm the oldest of 4 kids, have 3 brothers. And I think part of my personality was developed by being the only girl and being the oldest. And I've enjoyed that. People have described me a whole lot of different ways. I think the nickname around here is the Energizer Bunny. And I like that term because I like to think that I'm someone that brings energy into the room and helps people find their own energy. I'm finding as I get older that sometimes that battery wears down a little bit. But that's still, kind of a metaphor for me and an image I like to hold on to.
So I'm curious, what did you do before getting into the church? Did you do anything prior? Did you go
I'm one of those people that went right from college into theological school. So you have your undergrad degree and then you have a master's in theology. And so there's not many people that do that anymore. So I was the youngest the whole 3 years I was in my graduate program. And I knew when I was in high school that I had some kind of call to serve in the church. Wasn't sure it was going to be in a parish or a local church. I was thinking about long-term care ministry, which is what my dad does. I grew up, actually that's a fun part of my background. I grew up at a retirement community in Philadelphia. So we had 400 grandparents, lived on 12 acres of land in a big old house in Philadelphia. So that's another big piece that has shaped my life. So I thought I was going to follow my dad's footsteps, and then I got involved in local churches in new ways in high school, and I thought, this is pretty cool, being able to be a part of people's lives the way a pastor is.
So what steps do you have to take to become a pastor? Do you work in the church for a certain amount of time? Do you have to deliver a certain amount of sermons? How does that work? In our denomination, you have an undergraduate degree, which can be in anything. And it was actually advised to me to not get a degree in religion, that the best pastors are pastors that are well-rounded, and you'll get plenty of religion when you get to your theological studies. So I was a history major. And then we have a 3-year master's program. And in the master's program, you're learning about preaching and counseling and Bible and all of that. And part of that study is that you have what we called field education experiences. So I had experiences in a couple different churches where I had a chance to work with youth, preach, lead worship, all of those kinds of things to prepare me for ministry. So I was pretty young when I started. I was 23, so that's pretty young, and I think about this a lot, about my first church, being willing to accept someone who was so young as a leader. And that's another piece that has been influential to me, is what can I do to help influence and mentor young people, because I had so many chances at such an early age all along my career and as a teenager growing up. How can I pass that on to others? So when did you come to this church in Frederick, and why did you choose Frederick? Are you married?
Yes.
Do you have children?
2 boys. Yeah.
How old?
27 and 30.
So are they out?
They're out of, well, kind of. One's out of the house. He lives in Pittsburgh and is married, and he's an engineer. And the youngest was teaching English in Thailand for 4 years and came home last year. So he's trying to figure out what he wants to do with his life.
Very cool.
My husband is the CEO and president of a company called United Church Homes of Ohio, which does long-term care work in the church.
Okay.
So in some ways, he's like my father in his career.
Connected like that.
Yeah. So Ken and I are both from Pennsylvania. And I had been at my previous church for about 17 years.
Okay.
And that's a long time to serve a church. And the kids were they were in high school, but there was this sense that maybe it was time to make a change. And I was invited to interview here. It was what I call a cold call. And the church called, and the staff person said, we're looking for someone who is interested in mission, youth, and engaging lay leadership and empowering leaders. And I remember saying, oh, all churches say they want that, but they really don't, and no, this is true. And I came down and interviewed, and I remember coming home saying to my husband, this feels like a call. Like, I like these people, it fits. So it was a good move, I loved where I served in Pennsylvania, but this is so much like my home church in Philadelphia in terms of its engagement with the city and with social justice and advocacy movements, and it's a great fit. And I love the people. I love the history. I'm glad that we're rooted and we celebrate that history, but we're not a museum, and we're not stuck. We use that as a foundation for what we're doing now.
So tell us, we're at 15 West Church Street, correct? Right. So tell me a little bit of history about the church, and then about where we are sitting now in your new facility.
Okay, great.
That's attached to the church.
That's attached to the church. So we've been here since 1745.
Okay.
And so we're not sure exactly when our first church services were. They were somewhere up on the Monocacy. So we've just adopted the founding of the city's date as our date, because we came over with that wave of German immigrants. And the founder of the church was a schoolmaster, John Thomas Schley. And we've kept that sense of education, I think, with us throughout our history. But our first building was across the street. Okay. And now we have a chapel on that site. So we were over there, and then we built this larger sanctuary in the late 1880s. And then it served as a hospital during the Civil War, like the other churches that were downtown at the time. And then we built this house in the late 60s, and it's where the minister lived. Okay. And then in the late 80s, we had our pastor moved and bought his own home, and that became our office building. Okay. But for a long, long time, the social room that's behind us was small. It was not adequate for what we needed. And so we started to explore what is it that we need to be about, and what kind of space do we need. And so we had this whole church discussion in 2012, and we made a list of what we needed, and we had the little kids all the way up to the oldest people in the church participate, and we all identified the same needs, gave those to an architect, and where you are now is the result of that work. It was hard work. That started in 2012, and we occupied the new space in August of this year. Oh my gosh. So it was a long process, but we learned a lot during it, and I learned a lot about each other. And now we're excited about opening up this space to the community. It is truly a state-of-the-art space. You've got elevators. We're accessible, totally accessible on this side of the street. That's awesome. And you've got a large room, banquet room, whatever conference room, whatever you want to call it. Seats about 210 people, is that correct? Yep, we're calling it the community room. Community room, yep. Okay. And then an incredible kitchen. Yeah. Like you guys gave us a tour of the kitchen. Yeah. That's as good as any commercial kitchen in downtown Frederick. That's what we've heard. We've heard that it's the best, so we'll have to see. But awesome. We're happy with it, yes. Awesome. Barbara, so going back to a personal basis, what's the last purchase that you splurged on for yourself or your family, or maybe it was a trip? Yeah, I like to travel, but I travel cheap, so I can't say that was a splurge. Okay. The latest thing we did, which we really struggled at our house whether we would do, is we just renovated our garage, which is a carriage house. So we live a few blocks from here. And what's interesting is that the wooden structure has been there for over 100 years, and it's just incredibly strong. But the outside had roofing tile, and it wasn't very attractive. And now we have, instead of the barn doors, we actually have a garage that I can drive my car in. Awesome. So that was a splurge, but it was good. And what hobby or interest could you spend hours doing outside of your work? I really like going to thrift stores
Okay.
and discount stores and finding bargains.
Okay.
I could do that for hours. That's a real stress relief. I get really excited when I find something.
When you find a bargain?
Yeah.
So do you have any favorite local shops down here in Frederick that
I
you walk
love to go to Select Seconds.
Right.
I like to go out to Ollie's. I go to Goodwill. Any of those places, or anybody's having a yard sale. You never know what you're going to find.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So, running a facility, a congregation, a church, membership, you are almost, and you have a team around you, in essence, a business owner. I mean, that's how I view it. Because without your membership, without your growth, without the community surrounding you and supporting you, a structure like this does not come to fruition, correct?
Correct.
So I'm going to tweak the questions here a little bit, but I also want to delve down that path because you do have to have a following. Mm-hmm. You do have to grow your membership to have a beautiful facility like this. So what is that passion inside of you that keeps you moving every day? And this could go in one of two ways here. So what's your initial inclination? Then I'll follow up with another question depending on which way you go.
Yeah. I really think that our church can make a difference in transforming people's lives.
Okay.
There's a lot of hurting people out there who are looking for a safe place and for community. And if we're doing what we're called to do, we're creating that space in that community so that you can come in to the building, and the building itself ought to represent who we are, so that when you come in, the accessibility is a way of saying this is a safe place, we want you to be here. But these colors are intentional so that it's a bright light space. We want it to be warm, we want it to be hospitable. And then the things that we do where we identify those places in our community, in the world where there's hurt and pain, that gives people permission to say, oh wow, somebody's hearing me, or this is a place where I can express that discomfort I have, or that I'm struggling, or my questions in life. And that's what keeps me going. When I wake up in the morning, I just think, well, who knows whose life we might change this day. There may be somebody who, they were so broken, they didn't know how they were going to get up that day.
Right.
But they knew there was a place and people that would care about them.
So you want to be a community facility.
Yeah.
A community destination for, you talked about some nonprofits. Your lower level is beautiful. You could host weddings there, events there. You want to be a central hub for the community, not just Saturday evening or whenever your services are, Saturday evening and Sunday services. You want to be a place where you're open. Is that correct?
Yeah. When I picture this space, I hope in a few months from now, every day, in the morning, the afternoon, the evening, somebody is in here,
right.
Whether it's church folks or people from the community. When we were working on the marriage equality legislation in Maryland, I remember folks from the LGBTQ community telling us that they always saw our former social room as a safe place. And one of my colleagues said if ERUCC wasn't here, we'd lose the voice of the conscience in the community.
Okay.
And I have held those thoughts really close to say that is really something we ought to respect and honor and not take for granted. And if we are that voice, then we need to be that voice and find ways to continue to be that voice. But we have to continue to find ways to create that space and that openness that people know this is a place where you can be. So we've already, since the community room's been open, we've had a couple events that really demonstrated that we want to be a place where people who have differences can talk about it.
Right.
And talk about it in a respectful way that honors each one of us as human beings.
So what is a piece of advice that you would give somebody just starting out in, let's call it the adult world, and finding themselves, maybe we'll go that route, and finding themselves.
Yeah.
When you grow up and you go to school for 18 years or however long, and then you go to college, and then I'm sure you counsel a lot of youth and a lot of adults and a lot of people in general. What's a overarching theme that you see maybe for younger kids that are just starting out in the world?
I think you have to listen to your heart.
Okay.
That's what I say to everybody. Mm-hmm. But you asked a good question, like what gets you motivated? Mm-hmm. People know that. Like you say, where does your heart sing? Where is your passion? And that's what you ought to follow. And then you have to figure out some way to live. I mean, there's lots of things people would like to do, but perhaps they can't make a living from it. Well, how can you live out that passion while you do some kind of work to find your living? But don't ever give up your passion, whatever that is, because that's part of what makes you who you are.
Right.
And that's what brings happiness. I remember working with a guy back in my former church in Pennsylvania. He hated his job. But what he loved was working with the youth group at the church. So that passion gave him the energy to go to work every day. And he had enough vacation. He could go with the youth group whenever he wanted. And I learned a lot from that experience, that you could mold your life in such a way that you could make a living and live out your passion.
Right.
And that was a great example for me. So I have to remind myself of that too, but I think that's a good piece of advice for anybody of any age. Like when people retire now, mm-hmm. They're healthy, what would you like to do? What would make you get motivated to get up in the morning,
right.
like you said.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big thing. What do you do on the day-to-day that brings you happiness, brings you joy? The daily grind of having a job or working takes a toll on people, mm-hmm. If they don't enjoy it.
Yeah.
So on the flip side of that, maybe what, in your experiences, and it could be building out this building, what's a piece of advice that somebody gave you that didn't turn out the way that they said it might?
Yeah. I think because the world is changing so much, the church is changing a lot. Mm-hmm. And so every day somebody comes out with a new gimmick of something to do, right. For the church that's going to grow the church or bring more people in. And I think that's some of the worst advice I've ever gotten, which is, just buy this program, or if you just get this kind of music, or you just get this kind of person to speak, that somehow miraculously, the people are going to be rushing through your doors. And for me, it never felt authentic. And it's very tempting when you see, oh wow, they got 50 people to come in for this thing. But then I always have to say to myself, is this who we are? Like every church has a unique culture, and every church has a unique way of being in the world. And if we're not that way of being in the world, it's lost. Right. So to me, that piece of advice was, yeah, okay, that I can learn from that, but how might that fit with who we are, and how can we remain honest and authentic in who we are? Because people can tell right away if you're not real. And this is why I like working with youth, because they can sniff out inauthenticity from right. a mile away. So they keep me honest.
I'll tell you, it's not only in churches. You go to any walk of business, there's always somebody selling a program, yeah. or selling if you do this, then yeah. you get 100 new clients or referrals or members or whatever. So it's in every walk of life where they're selling the get rich quick or. Mm-hmm. So that's funny. The parallel between business and church.
Well, and I wanted you had asked something about this earlier about it being a business. I think this is one of my learnings in the last few years, is that we are a nonprofit business. Our business is sharing the good news that we know in God through Jesus, but we have to operate with appropriate and best practices in business. So whether that's
Absolutely.
around staffing, around fundraising, around finances, about building management. So I've been doing a lot of work the last couple years and going to seminars and reading books about being a nonprofit. And this building project really taught me about that, is that when I'm out operating in the community, people will interact with me as if I'm the executive of a nonprofit. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so they kind of expected me to know certain things that in some cases pastors didn't usually know. But when you're talking to the bank about your loan, I'm seen as the executive.
Right.
I don't make all those decisions, of course, by myself, but I had to find new ways to claim being that role of the church and representative in the community.
Well, you're the face of the church.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So Barbara, in the last 3 years, what's a choice that either you've made or the church has made that's led us to where you are today?
Well, you're sitting in here.
Right.
We had to make an intentional choice with, I would say, a lot of risk, that we knew we needed to do something with the existing facility and something new if we expected to be alive and thriving 50 years from now. We had never had a mortgage, never took on any kind of big project like this. So that was, I'd say that was a real challenge, but that was an intentional choice. Because I could be honest, there were days where I thought, I'd like to just leave this building behind and go somewhere where there's one already built.
Right.
Because it does take a lot of emotional energy to journey with people, especially when we're all anxious about it. But I'm very grateful for the staff and the members of the congregation. We had this vision and we stuck to it, and here we are. It took a long time, but we've grown, and I think we're much stronger as a result.
Awesome. So Pastor, I've sat across the microphone from 164 other entrepreneurs, business owners, thought leaders. I get to learn so much by asking questions. So I want to flip the script and have you ask me a question.
So I want to ask you.
Looks like you prepared for this. I'm a little nervous now.
I like to know what's going on in people's lives. So I'm going to ask you the same question you asked me. What gets you motivated to get up in the morning?
Number one is helping people and making a difference in others' lives. We do that a few different ways. And I'll back up to that. And then number two is being a parent. Okay, so I've got two boys, they're 12 and 9, and they might not listen to everything that you say to them, but they sure as watch what you do. And I'm trying to control my language since I am inside a church. And just being somebody that they look up to and make good choices for them. As far as making a difference in people's lives, I do that a couple different ways. One is Advice Givers, the podcast. About 4 years ago, my other line of work, I kind of found a way to help share my story, my passions, my beliefs, through the written word, with my audience, and my business exploded. So I wanted to find a way to help other business owners and entrepreneurs share their story. So my first thought was writing magazines for them, and that just was too cumbersome. So the podcast, which started out as an audio interview, which is how most podcasts are, and yes, we have a video camera here, but we are also on iTunes, so the audio is recorded here, was my way to help other business owners, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders in the community, in various communities, share their story. Okay. Now you might go out, and when you go to meet with a bank, you might want to check out our interview on Advice Givers at minute 17. We talked about why we are growing this way. So to be that platform to help other business owners share their story. In the real estate world, which is how I make my money to afford to do these interviews, buying and selling a house, you're involved at a much different and deeper level, but you're involved at a very stressful time in people's lives when they're moving, they're selling their house, or they're buying a house. It's been said that buying and selling a house is right up there with death and divorce as far as emotional stress. So I pride myself on being there to take as much emotional stress off my clients as possible. Okay, they only know about 10% of what I do for them to get them from here to here. And I'm a great problem solver. You come to me with a problem with real estate, with Advice Givers, with whatever, I can always find a way. I always tell my assistant and my staff there's more than one way to skin a cat. Figure out a way. If you can't go this way and you come to a roadblock, there's always alternative ways. The third thing that we do and gets me up in the morning is Impact Club. I'm not sure if you've heard of the Impact Club or not, but we have raised and donated over $191,000 in the last 2 years. We have 8 events. So I am the co-founder of the local Impact Club here. We bring in 3 local nonprofits. We have members. We are 75 members at the moment. Members pledge to donate $100 a quarter. We bring in 3 local charities, as I mentioned. The 3 charities get up on stage. They have a microphone and they have 5 minutes. They have 5 minutes to tell their story. Our members vote on one of the 3 charities that they want to receive that quarter's donation, and that charity with the most votes gets that quarter's donation. We've had Blessings in Backpack, Hartley House, COIP, 8. We've had 8 winners. Okay. And that's not a full-time job, although it takes up a large part of my effort, but that is the way, circling back to point number 2, that my kids come to those events. There are children. We had 20 or 30 children at the last event, and it's important for them to see how you can give back to the community in various ways and help others, because most of the kids there, they're more fortunate than some of the other ones. A couple interviews ago, Ajay Hill, I Believe in Me, we had him on, and he's doing a great job with a select youth in the area. And it's people like that are doing the hands-on that the Impact Club is able to support them through monetary donations once a quarter. It's pretty cool to see play out.
Well, I was going to say, and those kind of donations for a nonprofit make all the difference in the world. Really does. Not only gives hope, but it can be an infusion of cash to keep them going. That's awesome.
I'm learning more about the nonprofit world every day, and fundraising is a huge issue. It's a huge issue. And when they come and they can give a 5-minute story and walk out of there with $28,000 for in one night, it's pretty powerful.
Well, and the other thing you're doing is you're transforming the givers.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Is that you're, and that's the impact. Is that you have the impact on the nonprofit and the impact on the givers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Good
That's
question.
Neat.
Good
That's
question.
Neat. Yeah.
Thank you for asking that. So what failure or loss has helped mold you into the person you are today? This could be personal, this could be spiritual, this could be church-wide, however you want to go.
Yeah, that's a tough one, because I think that lots of times those experiences just have been integrated into my life, these different challenges. I was ordained at a time where there weren't a whole lot of women in ministry. So those were challenging days to be the only one at the table and be true to myself, and with all of those pressures. I think the biggest challenge recently was in February, I was diagnosed with a brain tumor, just out of the blue. I was with our youth group in New York and just started to get disoriented, and here it was the size of a baseball, and it was benign, which was great. But I think that at that moment, I really had a sense of what folks in our church go through in terms of their own diagnoses. And it caused me to think about my life, because I think in some ways I got another chance.
Right.
So how will I live life differently? And of course, the building project was coming to an end. Could I find ways to be more centered, more grounded, and not be reacting to every issue that comes along the way, as we had to do with the project? So I would say that that was a loss of innocence in some ways, because I've been a very healthy person and no medication, no problems, and all of a sudden, boom, something that could have been really life debilitating. And so I really appreciate every hour, every ounce of life that I have, and I do want to pay attention to how I'm living, because I really do feel like I got another chance to live.
I'm sure that's a powerful message you can share with others.
Yep. Thanks.
Awesome. So where do you see, and this could either be for yourself or the church, one or the other, in 3 years and then in 10 years?
So I really love being the pastor here. I just feel there's an affinity with the history of the church, but mostly with the people. And I just love seeing people step up, explore their passions, be engaged. So I hope that in 3 years from now, we will be seen not as a community center, that we're a church, but that we will be that community gathering place where people say, oh, I know where you can go, or I know who, will provide the opportunity for you to explore that issue or gather or plan or whatever. And I hope that that'll be true, 5 years down the road. I hope 10 years from now that we're debt-free.
Right.
That's a big hope for me, because we want to be able to release ourselves of the building debt so that we have those funds available for more engagement and mission. Right. And so that's where I see ourselves. And I know it's challenging because people engage with churches differently these days. And so I think that's going to be an ongoing learning experience about why someone may not be here on a Sunday morning, but they're engaged Monday night, Wednesday night. For them, that's church. So let's embrace that. They're engaged. They believe in what we're doing. They want to be a part of it. So let's say amen.
Awesome. So Barbara, for our listeners and viewers, where are we located? When are your services? Okay. And then if somebody wanted to contact you or one of your staff about the community room and renting it or holding an event here, how would they do that?
Great. So we have 2 services every Sunday, 8:30 over in our historic chapel, and then 10:30 in our main sanctuary building. And we'd be happy to show anybody the space, give you a tour. You can always give me a call to talk to me. I'm always available to talk with folks. And my number at the office is 301-662-2762. And if you want to talk about the space and seeing the space and renting the space, you can talk to Amy at that same number.
Awesome. Listeners, viewers, I hope you enjoyed Pastor Barbara's interview as much as I did. Thank you. It was a great day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.